And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Amber, the West Coast medium who had a near-death experience due to a stroke, which we're going to learn about today and more. Amber, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Let's start on the day that your stroke happened and go from there.
Yeah. So just kind of a tiny backstory. I already had some gift, if people believe in that. I already was the West Coast medium, so I didn't gain that from going to the other side. And so, I had been doing that work since 2015, 16, and the stroke happened in 2021. So the day it happened, the night it happened, that day, it was December 21st, and I am Christmas crazy, or December 22nd. I'm Christmas crazy. I always have been, and I hadn't had a big Christmas dinner since COVID because we couldn't have people over. In Canada, there was really, really firm restrictions on what you could do or not. And so that day we had done like family gingerbread house decorating. And, it was a busy day. It was my little family. And then we had some other friends over, and it was a great day. And I was going to be doing a Christmas dinner 2 days after that. And so, we ended our day. We were sitting on the couch and we were watching a Christmas movie, me, my husband, and my 2 kids. And all of a sudden, I had just a very severe headache. Like I was fine throughout the day. I didn't have a headache. I had like tension headaches throughout my life. I have some back issues. And so, I would get headaches quite often. But this was like nothing I'd ever felt. All of a sudden, my head just hurt. And it was only maybe 9 o'clock, but I was like, you know what, you guys, I don't think I can finish the movie. I'm going to go to bed. I just don't feel good. And my head really hurts. And I now know that that's called a thunderclap headache. It means your carotid is dissecting, which mine did. And so I went into the bedroom, went to bed. And about an hour later, I texted my husband because they were still on the couch, maybe half an hour. And I said, my head is really hurting still. It's not going away. Can you bring me a Tylenol and an Advil? And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Brought me that. I have celiac as well, and sometimes that can give me really bad headaches. And so I didn't really think anything of it. And I thought I went to sleep. I think I actually went into unconsciousness because my carotid had dissected on the left side of my neck. And I didn't wake up. Strokes aren't painful. My neurologist said, like, when they're on shift, they go to sleep usually around 11 and they sleep until 4 or 5 in the morning because that's when they get all the stroke calls, because a lot of people have strokes at night and they don't wake up. So I didn't wake up until around 4:30 in the morning, and I didn't know what was happening. I felt really weird. I thought I was dreaming because my right side, I didn't put it together. My brain didn't tell me I was paralyzed, but my right side felt weird. And I'm like, you know what? I must be dreaming. I used to have dreams of spiders like attacking me and I would be paralyzed. And so I'm like, it must be a spider dream. I just need to get to the bathroom. I need to get up and hopefully it'll wake me up. And so I used my left hand to sort of push myself up to sort of sit on the edge of the bed, still not realizing that, I was paralyzed and I couldn't talk because my husband had fallen asleep on the couch. So I was in my bedroom alone. And I saw, I think, my phone, but I didn't understand what it was or how to use it. And so I tried to stand up and I collapsed onto my right side because it was completely paralyzed. There wasn't even a shadow of movement, is what the doctors explained. And so I fell to the floor. And then I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. If I'm still dreaming, I don't know what, this is like a nightmare. My brain couldn't make me understand at all what was going on with my body. I was super confused. And I just thought, I need to get to my husband. I need to get to somebody because I don't know what's happening. And I tried to pull myself with my left arm to pull myself to the door. And it felt like it was like an hour, but it wasn't. It was probably just a couple of minutes. And I couldn't pull myself because paralyzed weight is like dead weight. And I couldn't pull myself forward. And so I turned a little bit and I banged on the wall super, super hard. Everybody in the house thought it was like gunshots, which I'm in Canada. We don't really have gunshots. And so it woke them up. And my husband came into the room. My mom also heard because she lives in my basement suite with my dad, and she started coming up. And my husband came in the room, and I was on the floor facing away from him, kind of sort of propped, but really awkwardly. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I didn't respond. And so he tried to pick me up. He thought I was dreaming, and he tried to pick me up. And again, I was so heavy, and I'm a really small person. And he's like, okay, he's put me down because he couldn't lift me up and turned on the light, walked around and looked at me. And he actually said, I think you're having an effing stroke. And somehow that got through. Like, I was like, what? Like, I still didn't fully understand. I thought I was talking, but I wasn't. I could say my sister's name, Michelle, and the F word, and then like a weird mumbling thing. And so it was just F word, Michelle, with weird kind of gargling noises. But my brain told me I was talking. And so I couldn't understand why he couldn't understand what I was saying. And my mom came up and my husband got on the phone with 911. And of course, because why not? I was naked because that's how I sleep. So I'm like, the ambulance is coming. Like, I need clothes. And I'm trying to tell them, like, I need clothes, but I couldn't get the words out. I had no idea what was happening. And so the next part is a little bit long. Essentially, the ambulance came. The paramedics didn't believe my husband that I was having a stroke, but he was a level 3 first aid, which is like the highest level you can be in Kent or where we live before being a paramedic. He had it for his job site. And he's like, she's obviously having a stroke. Look at her. She can't smile. She can't talk, whatever. They thought I was a drunk housewife because I live in a really nice neighborhood. And I guess it could have looked like opiates and alcohol, which I don't use either. And so they took their sweet time. And my husband was really mad. Hindsight, the stroke was complete, so there was nothing that could have been done anyways. And so they got me in the ambulance, got me halfway to the hospital, and the paramedic that was next to me looked at me, and I don't know how or why, but he just looked at me, and all of a sudden he's like, I think this is a stroke. And he said it to the guy driving, and he's like, no, I don't think. They still didn't turn the lights on. They still didn't speed. They just took their sweet time. They got me to the hospital, and I was in triage behind a nurse's station, and they were talking with other paramedics, chatting, not paying attention to me at all. And then a male nurse, turned around, saw me, and he's like, what are you guys doing? She's clearly having a stroke. And finally, he called a stroke code, which pages everybody to where I was. And then I kind of was in and out of consciousness as they took me very quickly for a CT, all that sort of stuff. My husband got there, I think, while I was in CT. And that's where they saw that not only had I had a massive stroke, an ischemic stroke of my MCA2 on the left side, because I hadn't woken up, it had caused a secondary stroke of my frontal lobe. And so that's pretty much a death sentence. Like, you don't really survive that type of stroke ever. But there is a drug that has proven to be miraculous. It's called TPA. I don't know the full name of it, but it's a anti-clotting or blood clot medication. It's very risky to give. I think that 50% of people die when given it because you can bleed out if you're really unhealthy. And so they explained this to my husband. This is probably her only hope of any type of recovery. And can we do it? And he's like, yes, of course, do it. And so they brought the TPA. They bring a crash cart because you die very quickly if you're going to die because of it. And they hooked me up to Benadryl. And so they gave it to me. And by this time, some of my family was there as well as my husband. My husband, I remember at this point, I regained some kind of consciousness and I looked over and my husband didn't know what a crash cart was. So he was leaning on it, like leaning. I'm like, Mike, like, and I couldn't talk. So I couldn't say, Mike, don't lean on the crash cart. Like they might need that. And so they gave me the TPA and I started having an anaphylactic reaction, not to the TPA, but to the Benadryl. Apparently, I am highly allergic. And so then it was crisis mode, trying to stop that while trying to keep me alive with the TPA. The good thing about TPA is usually you see improvements right away, like within seconds, if not minutes. And I got nothing, not one thing reversed. I had absolutely no feeling. I was completely paralyzed on the right side. I didn't react to pain stimulus on that side. I couldn't talk, nothing improved. And so nothing improved for the major stroke. It did stop that frontal stroke from spreading anymore, which I'm grateful for because there's a lot of stuff in the front of your brain that you need. But all the things that I can do now should have been gone, talking, walking, all of that sort of stuff. And so because it didn't work, they said the only option is brain surgery, to go in and remove the clots and try to get, some kind of recovery. But they didn't do it at that hospital. And so they needed to life flight me to another hospital, which they asked my husband, do you want us to do that? Yes, he did. And so they were trying to get the life flight there, but there was a storm coming. Again, it was winter here in Canada, and they didn't want to come. And thankfully, the charge nurse, who is, I think, a harsh person, but wonderful for patient care, she got on the phone and just lost it and said, I am not going to watch these children watch their mom die at Christmas. You are coming. I don't care, because if they hadn't come, it's a 15-minute helicopter ride, but it's a 2-hour drive to that hospital. And I wouldn't have made it, at least in their minds. And so they did come finally. My family all said goodbye, and I was conscious for most of that. I can remember, especially my kids, saying goodbye because they said more than likely I wouldn't survive the trip to the other hospital and they would have to drive up. So the nurse said, all of you need to say goodbye because you probably won't see her again. And they let my husband come in the helicopter, which they don't normally do. But again, they were saying that I was going to die and they didn't want me to die alone, and more for my family, right? From what I see, people on the other side don't really care if they're alone or not when they die, but for your family, they wouldn't want me to die alone. And so we got in the helicopter and there was a storm coming, but all of a sudden it was sunny. And we went up in the air and the sun was coming in the window and I was starting to get feverish. That's what happens. I didn't know that, but I was starting to get a fever because that's what happens when you are dying. Your body temperature can raise, and from the swelling in my brain. And so Mike was trying to protect me by covering my eyes from the sun. And I kept saying, don't do it, because as soon as that sun hit my face, that was it. I was on the other side. My body was still alive. So I was clinging barely to life. They were working on me constantly to keep my body alive in order to get to the brain surgery. But that didn't matter. My body wasn't necessarily my body anymore. I closed my eyes when that sun hit my face, and I woke up in the most beautiful garden that I've ever seen and will ever see, because it couldn't exist here. And I wasn't alone. I wasn't scared. There was no heaviness of feeling human and worried about my body or that I was dying, anything like that. I could see my body and I could see my husband. And I also could see all of my family panicking. I could hear them bargaining with God, and they're not religious. Well, my mom maybe is, but the rest of my family are not religious. And they were bargaining oh, if you let her live, I will do this and that. And I could see it all, but it sounds insensitive, but it's not. It didn't matter. It didn't make me want to do something different or go back or anything like that. as soon as I was there, that human amnesia that we're born with was gone. So I all of a sudden, in like an instant, knew everything. Every decision I've ever made, everything I ever regretted, everything to come, everything from my past, everything from all of my other lives, everything, everyone I had affected, whether positively or negatively, I all of a sudden had all that knowledge. And I was acutely aware that I was there to make a decision. I wasn't there to take a break or not be in my body because it was very painful what was happening. I wasn't there to be told to come back, like it's not your time. Nobody said that. I was just there to make the decision whether I wanted to keep living this human life. Full stop, that's it. My guides were there to help. And like I said, I'd already had, I already was gifted as a psychic medium, as a medical intuitive, a healer, that sort of stuff. And so I recognized them, I knew them. And they didn't give their opinion, but they were there just to support me and to help me see and understand everything that was going to happen and everything that would happen if I died and everything that would happen if I lived. And that's really what they were there for. It felt like I was there for 50 years. I know I was there to make a decision, but the feel of the grass and the energy that flowed through everything, it was kind of like Avatar. Like, if I put my feet in the grass, I could feel the energy of God. If I went to the water, there was like a little creek that ran through. If I went to the water and put my feet in the water, I could feel the energy of God, like everywhere. And again, I'm spiritual. I don't class myself as religious. I used to be. I have a long life story, but I don't class myself as, I don't base my decisions on the Bible or anything like that. But I've always believed in God, and literally everything there is God. And so it was very distracting to try to make this decision when like one blade of grass carried more love than any human on this planet or all humans on this planet. I could also see this big crowd kind of in the background, and they were all my other lives. And I could kind of recognize each one of them. Again, that human amnesia or that inability to see outside of yourself was gone. And also my husband and my kids were there, which is strange because they were definitely alive, but their higher selves were there. Because if I thought I had had to leave them fully, 100%, it wouldn't have been a choice. I would have just gone back. There was also one of my dogs, two of my dogs, one from when I was young and one that was still alive. And, I didn't question it at the time why I could see her. I think, or I had thought, because she was going to be put down after Christmas because she was almost 18. But actually she died 9 days after the stroke. So that's why I could see her, because she was already on her way there. And then a couple other family members, but I didn't talk to them. I knew that I didn't need to talk to them. They weren't a part of the decision. It wasn't like, oh, I've missed you so much, for like the people who were dead and I hadn't seen in a long time, because you don't miss them. Because when you're on the other side, you understand everything and you understand every connection, and that you don't ever leave them because a part of you is always there. In amongst the decision making and them showing me kind of what would happen, I got to see what my kids' lives would be like without me, and it would be a lot different than if I was here. Again, I wasn't sad about it, but it did factor into the decision making. But what they showed me of my life if I came back was too good of a learning opportunity for me to pass up. So they did say the first 18 months after the stroke was going to be the hardest time of my entire life. Full stop. There was no question that I would want to come back. I would regret the decision I made, and would beg, literally beg, to just let me die, give me another stroke, because it was like a peak amount of suffering. They said I would learn a lifetime's worth of lessons in 18 months in order to prepare me for what was coming next. But what was coming next was just so amazing that, my spirit self was like, oh yeah, 18 months, no biggie. Like, that's fine. 18 months for like a lifetime of being able to teach people these amazing things and being able to feel and sense all of these beautiful things and do this work that I'm going to do. To a spirit, that sounds fine, because 18 months is a flash in a pan. Oh, not after I came back, it did not feel like a flash in a pan. It felt horrible. But it felt like it took a long time. Throughout the entire time I was there, I was able to essentially keep tabs on my body, my family, but it was kind of detached and removed, like watching a movie where you might know some of the actors, but you're not invested in their story that much. And so it wasn't heartbreaking. It didn't make me panic like it would, right now, if one of my kids was suffering, I would be I would be invested and feel horrible. And it wasn't like that at all. And so after I finally, in this beautiful garden, which I didn't want to leave, but also I knew I had more purpose, as soon as I made the decision, it shifted again. And so what was happening with my body was I landed in the other hospital, and they were all waiting a big stroke. They have a stroke ward, stroke team there, neurologist, all of that sort of stuff, doctors, nurses. And they took me, and this part I'm very detached from. It was like it was happening to somebody else. I think they gave me more scans or something. And then I had a grand mal seizure because of the brain swelling. And so my guides, as this was happening, said, it's just about time to make the decision, because this seizure, if it doesn't stop quickly, your brain won't recover, and slowly you will die. And my death time was going to be 12:22 in the afternoon. And so it would have taken a couple of hours for me to die. But if the decision wasn't made, that was kind of it, and I was going to die that day. And so I made the decision while I was beginning just before the seizure. And as soon as I made it, it's like I closed my eyes again and I opened them, and I wasn't in the garden anymore. I wasn't back in my body, but I was in this light-filled, I call it a waiting room, but it didn't have walls or anything like that. It was just this almost no sensory, but continuous. It's like a warm hug, this really warm, like God's energy. And at that point, there wasn't people around me. My family was gone, the other side family, my other selves, my guides, everybody was gone. And I was just there waiting, and I got to choose if I wanted to be in my body for the seizure. But seizures are actually quite painful, and I chose not to. And so I was able to just stand and watch. Kind of like when, I don't know, I've seen it in movies, right? When people go above their body, like in an operating room, and they can see it was kind of like that. And then as soon as the seizure stopped, closed my eyes, and I was back in my body. And then the really hard work began. The first week after the stroke and the NDE, I was almost like on a high. Nothing could bother me. I was like, that was the most amazing. My family obviously was panicked, trauma, awful. I woke up. I don't remember. I was kind of unconscious after the seizure, and I didn't come back into consciousness in any continuous way for a couple of days. And when I did wake up, I still was paralyzed without a shadow of movement. I couldn't talk. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't eat. I was being fed through a tube. I couldn't communicate in any way. I didn't understand a lot of things. It took so much from me. So people talking was really hard and I couldn't understand it. And then I also, on the other side, gained this wonderful gift of being able to read people's thoughts or hear them. Because on the other side, everything is telepathic. The entire time I was there, I didn't say one word, not one word, except I talked nonstop. But it was all, nobody says words with their mouths. It's all telepathic. And so I couldn't understand why the nurses were being so insensitive, because they would come into the room and they would be like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for her. I just couldn't imagine having two young children and this is where she's spending Christmas. And I'm like, why are they saying this? Like, that's not helpful when you are newly brain injured and you can't do anything. And I'm like, what is happening? But I had also lost, when I had the first MRI, my right eye was completely blind. So it was all the way back in my head, which can happen with stroke. So I was completely blind, apparently, on that side. And so I still was struggling with some vision. And so I couldn't really see them. But I'm like, and I couldn't talk to say, can you guys not say that? And then after a bit, I realized they actually weren't talking. There were no words coming out of their mouths, but I could hear their thoughts, which was not very helpful. And so that lessened a little bit. I learned to control it. But I also woke up with unexplainable things. I all of a sudden could see. I was completely blind. And I remember when everybody was saying goodbye at the first hospital, anyone on my right side, I couldn't see. So like, I think my daughter was on my left when they said goodbye and my son was on my right. And I could kind of hear him, but I had no idea where he was. And so when I woke up, I could see. My vision was completely restored. In the first CT, they could see the carotid dissection super well. And it was 1.7 millimeters or something. So it was a significant size. And when I went, I think 3 days later for another MRI, they could see almost nothing. And so they don't totally agree if it dissected or not, because you're not supposed to heal that quickly. It usually takes upwards of 10 days. And all of a sudden it was already healing. I think so the stroke happened on the 22nd, morning of the 23rd. By, I think, the 27th, I was walking. And they said I would never be able to walk. I'd never really be able to talk, eat, go to the bathroom, anything like that. On Christmas Day, again, language is on your left side, and that is what I lost. But I'm left-handed. This is their explanation for it. So some left-handed people have a language center on their right side. And so the neurologist came in on Christmas Day, and my husband and kids were with me, and everybody obviously was devastated and so sad. And he's like, you guys should try singing with her, because that's on the other side of her brain. Singing and swearing, which is why I still swear, and I probably will. I'm learning to control it, but I don't realize I'm doing it. And so they're like, okay, let's try. And I actually have a video of Christmas Day, and we sang Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman. And I was able to sing, even though I couldn't talk at all. And somehow I just miraculously started recovering. The doctor didn't understand. Nobody understood. My neurologist actually brought other neurologists because they just couldn't get why I was getting better so quick. And then about a week in, and again, I'd had crappy things happen throughout that. I had some really bad headaches because of the brain swelling and stuff like that. About a week after, reality hit, and it was no longer this wonderful high from the other side. The lessons and everything I wanted to throw out the window. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, you guys said that this is going to be amazing, and I'm going to speak to like leaders of the world to help people not be assholes. When I now feel like why am I here? I can't talk. I can't eat. I can't take care of my family. I can't do anything. And you guys convinced me that coming back was the right choice. And now I got my family, my children are going to have to care for me for the rest of my life. So that 18 months that they talked about was starting, and it was not pleasant. And the seizures, because I had the grand mal seizure, and then I continued to have focal seizures, small like brain seizures, due to the brain swelling that first day. And so I was on very heavy medications, anti-seizure medications, as well as a whole bunch of other medications. And the side effects were horrible. The seizure medication made me want to unalive myself. It can be a side effect. They tried to switch me off of it, but my brain didn't agree with the other ones. So it was just horrible. And I kind of thought I had been punked. Like, I don't like I have seen movies where there's NDEs and they come back and everything's miraculous and they're so happy and this is wonderful and God healed them and all. And I came back and it was just like a shit sandwich. Like nothing felt good. Nothing felt like it was improving. And I had to work for every gain. What I didn't realize was I shouldn't have had any gains. I shouldn't have been able to do anything I was doing. I had severe aphasia and dysphagia and apraxia. So once I could start to talk, I didn't know most words. I didn't know how sentences should be. I sounded like a robot. I lost inflection. I had to teach myself inflection again. And just everything was awful. I was in the hospital in the ICU, I think, for 2 weeks. And they were doing tons and tons of tests to figure out why at 40 I had a massive stroke. And they never figured out why. They never nailed down a reason. Usually at my age, it's either lifestyle choices like smoking, drinking, birth control, which I've never used, I don't use any, or some certain birth defects, like a little mini hole in your heart, which I don't have. And so finally I got to go home and then started rehab, which was so, so hard. And again, so many times I begged my guides, and I didn't tell my family this, but I begged to go back. Everything on the other side is so easy and so full of love, and it's our home. This is our school. And for me, well, we're at 16 months now. So, that first year was the worst school I've ever been in my entire life. And I have not had an easy life. And so slowly I started getting better. They had taken my license, so I had no independence. I had to depend on everybody for everything. And I had to stay on the seizure medications for 6 months, and then I had to be off of them for 3 months with no medications and not have a seizure before I could apply to get my license back. So finally, I got my license this last December, almost a year to the day since the stroke. And slowly, everything that they said would happen is coming to fruition. I have written a book in the last 3 months. Don't ask me how, everything just falls into my lap. Now, everything they said I would do is starting to happen. I still get very, for lack of a better word, bitchy or like toddler temper tantrums. I know now that we plan our lives. We plan every moment of it. We plan our lessons. And that's really easy to say about somebody that has a perfect life. Horrible to say about somebody that has a massive stroke or somebody who's being abused or something like that. But we really do plan this life in order to learn. We come here to learn. We crave learning on the other side. We crave the enlightenment that comes from existing as a human. And I know that I planned this. God knows why sometimes. And I've asked myself many times. And they did explain on the other side that the other option for me to have an NDE was a massive car accident where I would be very, very injured, and wheelchair, stuff like that. And I chose the stroke because even though I'm missing about 2/3 of the left side of my brain, I look fairly normal. I now can talk fairly normal. When I get tired, not so much. I can't feel the right side of my body at all, but I can use it kind of. I don't have strength and stuff like that, but I know I chose it for a reason. And I understand that now. And I understand that, through my experience already, people are learning, and I'm helping to give people hope that, all these horrible things that happen to people doesn't have to like change negatively their life all the time, that we are strong enough to walk through it, and that we have our guides walking with us to help us to get a handle on, how crappy it can be. And that's not to say everything's roses and rainbows and that sort of stuff. I have real life struggles now. My NDE did not fix me. It didn't, make everything wonderful. Yes, I've seen the other side. I already had faith that the other side existed. So, it confirmed all the things that I've been talking about my whole life, but, it didn't take away that weight of being human. This is essentially school, but it's a school that we want to be in. And I think that part of life is kind of hard to understand if you have a, difficult life. But as I'm sort of moving forward, people normally don't write a book in 10 weeks. Like that's not a thing. And I can't type now at all. And I struggle with, again, still like putting words and sentences together, and my comprehension and retention is really bad. So it's just all falling into my lap. Somebody offered to help me write the book. So I haven't typed any of it. I just talk. Things like going and talking to other people, it just happens so seamlessly, that, I don't think I would necessarily recommend doing anything to have an NDE. But for me, at least, save for the really, really difficult times, I do have this sort of inner strength of, I know everything's going to be okay. I have faith that I'm not alone. And I think that's such a gift in this human world. We've never been so connected, but so lonely. So many people, were exposed to everything now all the time. And yet some people don't talk to another human for days on end. They have so many friends, but we aren't connected. And the gift of knowing I'm not alone, I just want everybody to know that. I want everybody to understand that. And that, we do have lessons, and we are going to learn them, whether or not we want to. But we do have these wonderful energies that will walk with us and help us and support us. They won't do it for us, but they will support us through that.
Amber, thank you for sharing your experience with us. Do you have any other new abilities besides the ability to read thoughts?
Yes. So I was an empath before. I was born this way. So I knew from my very first memory that I was different, because I could see dead people. I didn't understand they were dead people when I was young. I just thought adults were rude and didn't talk to some people. And I didn't know how to talk to them. I could just see them. But I also had psychic dreams or visions. I would know things were going to happen, and it was usually really awful stuff. So I spent my whole life avoiding my gifts. I wasn't interested. I was a social worker. I worked in mental health and addictions. I was a soccer mom. Like, I just had no interest. And I also, when I was young, chose religion because I felt so lost and I just needed some sort of direction. And so, we, as a family, we were a church family. I taught Sunday school, stuff like that. And when I accepted my gifts in 2015, everything changed. And as soon as I was able to identify, what was different, what I was capable of, it snowballed in a wonderful way. And I slowly started accepting my gifts. So before the stroke, I was a medium. I was psychic, or I call it spiritually intuitive because people don't like the word psychic. I was a medical intuitive and a healer and an empath, which, I could read people very, very easily. But when I came back, my empath gifts were off the charts. I honestly would have to tell my family, if you're going to be thinking that, you need to get out of the room because it's stressing me out, which isn't fair. My family's watching me. It was tentative. It was touch and go for the first few days, and they were panicking. They're not saying it out loud, but you can't stop your thoughts. And so And that continued. And I can still do that. I'm starting to learn not to. I say that my new gift, I guess, is I can read souls. So I know why you are the way you are, how you got there, and where you're going. And I just know by being near somebody. I also now can talk to animals a lot easier. And I can essentially just know everything about everybody. My telepathy abilities now are a lot easier. So when I'm doing a reading and somebody's guides are with us, they think it, I speak it. I don't have to listen and repeat. Um, and I also, although I had retrograde, this word's hard for me because I still have aphasia, retrograde amnesia. So I lost everything from March 2020 when we went down into lockdown until the stroke. I had no memory of that when I woke up. And then 2018 and 2019 was super patchy. And I still struggle with that. But what I gained is every conscious memory I've ever had. So all of a sudden, I could remember being 6 weeks old, 2 weeks old, a year old, so easily, like it was just like it happened yesterday. Um, there is never a time when I don't know what is going on with everybody around me. And but that's how it is on the other side. You just innately know. So, you know, I think it'll be good and or bad if I do start to public speak, because I will know if people in the audience are throwing horrible things at me, like you are nuts, you're talking crazy, like what is wrong with you? Because it's really hard to turn it off now. Before the stroke, I had some very good boundaries, and now they are a little bit more lacking. Um, but I wouldn't change it for the entire world. I am definitely different than anybody else on the planet. Whether that's good or bad, I don't quite know yet. You know, who you talk to, they'd have different opinions. But all of my gifts are times a million. The only thing I'm not doing since the stroke is mediumship. It's not that I've lost interest in it, and that is the ability to talk to dead people. It's that the like humans on the other side, the energy is a little bit lower, and I feel very drawn to go there. And I feel like I need to stay firmly planted here. So I don't know if mediumship will be part of my future, but I'm not questioning the fact that I don't want to do it right now. Once in a while, I will if there's a dead person that just has to talk because they can be a little insistent. But most of the time, they respect my boundaries. But everything else is so much easier, better. I can talk to people who can't talk. So nonverbal people that are dying or have never been able to talk or communicate. I just know. I know exactly what they want to say and how they want to say it.
Do you feel that long-term memories have nothing to do with your brain? And since you have that ability to remember all these things since you were 2 months old or 6 months old, it's not a memory from the brain. It's that you have some new contact with your higher self that's giving you the ability to retrieve those.
Yeah, because I'm so much more in tune with anyone on the other side. And those memories are part of my learning process. And I was able to look at all the learning when I was there, just like you can do when you die. And it just all made sense, you know, and some of the things that I struggle with interpersonally or family relationships, stuff like that, I now can kind of look back and go, that is when that started. I need to work on that moment, that memory, or that thing that I went through. The other gift I have gained just in the last 3.5 weeks, my guides like to bug me when I'm in the shower with water. I don't know why. And they're like, you need to paint. I'm like, what? I've never painted in my life. I'm not painting. And they're like, you need to paint. You have to paint what you saw on the other side. You need to show people what you're talking about. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. I am not creative. I've never painted. they're like, you need to paint with watercolors. And I'm like, so I ignored them for 3 or 4 days. And then I'm finally like, okay, my son has lots of art stuff and he had a cheap thing of watercolors. I'm like, I'll try it so you can leave me alone. And so I did it. And all of a sudden I could paint. And I haven't stopped. I just paint all day long. Here, actually, if you want a little, I'm calling it my Flowers from Heaven series, but it started with flowers, but I'm also now doing things like this, like galaxies, but like flowers. And this is kind of what was in the field, they were just colors that don't exist here. So it's really hard to paint because we don't have those colors. But I've never painted in my life.
Those look great. When I look at them quickly, it kind of almost gives you the feel of the other side.
Yeah. And the colors and again, I've never been interested in painting. I have a lot on my plate. But yeah, I won more gifts.
When you are painting, do you just pull up like a memory and try to see the memory and paint it?
Yep. Yeah. And I've tried because I was like, how much flowers or galaxies can you paint? So I've tried to look at tutorials of what about painting Earth, right? So I have tried mountains. Can't do it. Looks like a kindergartner did it. So I can't paint anything here. And if I try to do that, because I feel like if you're a painter, you should be able to paint anything. Nope, I can paint flowers from the other side, the galaxies that I could tune into or other dimensions or whatever, I can paint that. And that's it.
Since you've been to the other side, you kind of understand at least one realm or two realms that you are in. You also have the ability to be a medium. So for those people that are on the other side that you're communicating with, what realm do you think they're in?
There's literal infinite realms, infinite dimensions, including past, present, and future Earth. But the other side to me is kind of home base. So that is our home. That is where we belong the most. But we aren't only able to come to this dimension. The more enlightened souls, there's so many other dimensions, so many other higher consciousness. One of my guys, I call him Peter. His name's not Peter. His name was weird or something like that. And so I call him Peter because it's non-threatening. When I went to the other side, he was a part of God. He was part of that higher consciousness. They are very interested, though, in past, present, and future dimensions here. So again, or not again, I don't think I've said this, time and space don't exist there. There's no, tie to any time. And all of our lives are being lived at the same time. So we are living in 1799. We are living in 2400. We have unfortunately killed this planet infinite times. And we just go back to whenever what invention created that sort of, what's that called? Domino effect of ruining this planet. And we go back and try and fix it over and over and over again. They tried to explain to me on the other side something that I don't think I'd thought about too much, because I do try to be firmly grounded here as a human, but they showed me kind of that our lives, or my life now, it's kind of like a hologram or a video game or avatar or something. We create it to learn. And so I'm like, well, does that mean I created everybody? Not really, but we're all part of that higher energy. We're all part of God. We all come from God, and then we always all go back. So I think of it as, this isn't your question, but you know what? This is where they're going. So our higher self, so the piece of me that's always on the other side, I think of it as a rain cloud. And then all the lives we live are raindrops. And the raindrops come down, live lives in all different dimensions, past, present, and future. We live the lives. We go about, do stuff, learn, bring some of that enlightenment and knowledge back, reabsorbed into that rain cloud of your higher self. God is the highest rain cloud. So he creates all the other rain clouds, and we eventually go back. We reach that enlightenment to be not reabsorbed, but get to be a part of that highest energy, that highest knowledge and enlightenment. And again, there are collective consciousness that far surpass anything we kind of can achieve. And I don't delve into that much. There's certain things that I don't know if it's going to be helpful for me. And so I know that there's infinite dimensions, and I know there's infinite ability to practice free will to create the future that we want as a whole, as a collective, but also individually.
Did you happen to physically see your guides on the other side?
Yeah.
And what did they look
and
like?
they looked exactly how they looked when I would talk to them. My guide, Gail, who's my dominant guide, looks like an ageless grandma, very wise, very beautiful. Everybody was wearing white except for my other lives. They were dressed like period clothes, if they were living in the 1800s, that's what they looked like. But all the souls and higher selves of people all were dressed in white. And so Gail, yeah, it's like nobody looks really old, but she looked old in that she looked like a grandma, but no wrinkles or anything like that. You don't carry weight or anything. And then Jessica, my secondary guide, she's like a 21-year-old blonde bombshell. And me, even, I was 40 at the time of the stroke and the NDE, and I looked about 25-ish. I didn't look like I'd had kids. I didn't have any scars, stretch marks, wrinkles. I was wearing this beautiful white dress, but there was no, women will appreciate this, I didn't have to wear a bra or anything uncomfortable. Like it was home. I just felt like me. And, I think a lot of the people looked around 25, even though, like some of them were grandmas when they died, stuff like that. But my guides looked human because guides have lived human lives. And so they looked or chose to look how they wanted to. Usually it's their favorite human life or their last one or the one they learned the most. But they looked like people standing there just with love, like they vibrated with or exuded that highest energy, just like the water and the flowers and the grass.
Did you see any non-human looking beings and or beings that could be considered ascended masters?
No, I couldn't see God because God doesn't take human form, I don't think. And I was acutely aware that where I wasn't fully the other side. I have always said to my guides, again, I had such a good relationship with them. And I've always said, when I die, I better wake up with the best Christmas party ever and a unicorn. Like, that's all I want. I want a Christmas party with all of my family, good food, and I want a unicorn because why not? And so when I died or went to the other side, it wasn't that. And they sort of explained that it's not like a waiting room, but it's an in between. So a human that goes fully to the other side, they're not coming back. You don't because you are faced with God's infinite light, and no human will want to come back when that happens. So it's essentially like a waiting room. So maybe 50% of the energy that you get on the other side. So a lot of the higher beings, I don't think would have been concerned about talking to me, being around me, unless I chose to go to the other side fully. So it really was kind of a pit stop just to make that choice and to consciously say, yes, I want to come back and share my story and help people. And my one guide, Jessica, swears, and she is the performer. And her saying is, you're going to come back so you can help people not to be assholes, because that's what the world is right now. Everybody, needs to focus on themselves so they can survive and get through. So I didn't see weird like aliens or anything. They have said though, and this might be interesting. My husband's very like interested in all the weird like flying objects that, everybody's seeing recently, but for a long time. Um, that is actually our future selves. We have learned to go back in time to try to help us to not mess everything up. And so, the other night, a couple of weeks ago, my husband's like, because there was another article or another thing on these sites that he has. And he's like, well, what about this one? I'm like, no, that is us from the future trying to help us not fuck it all up. So I think that's super interesting. And they confirmed that when I was on the other side.
If you could put a number to it, what percentage of what you learned and knew on the other side did you bring back?
If I sit and concentrate 100%, when I'm going about my day, it fades, it kind of, I don't think about it and it fades, and the weight of being human takes over. I would say because of the discrepancy of that, maybe 75 to 80%. The knowledge of my whole life, although it sounds cool, I probably could be happy with that, not having that. It's not great being able to see all the times you've been hurt and stuff like that, and the difficult things that made you who you are. Like we usually learn about it and we forget it unless it's super traumatic. But I can think, I don't even have to close my eyes. I can almost instantaneously see the other side, be back on the other side, feel that love, not as intensely, but that knowledge is just here all of the time, just beside me. Again, humans are stubborn and I'm no exception. And I get mired down in the muck and forget about it or think they aren't, maybe I was crazy, maybe it was brain death or whatever, which I think is a healthy response. You don't want to just go forward constantly, but I can be there in a second all of the time. So in that way, if I can tune in, close my eyes, I can get 100% of everything I picked up. And then when I'm going about my day, it's in and out.
Do you think a piece of us is always connected to the other side? It's just that since you're NDE, you can easily connect, whereas most of us really can't.
Yes, 100%. Because again, that rain cloud, that piece of you that is always on the other side can connect with you at any moment. I think a little part of where we're at right now does a disservice for humans, like the spiritual world is kind of blowing up as people are looking for answers of why does bad stuff happen to good people? And so everybody, it seems, is trying to teach people how to, connect with your guides and your higher self and stuff like that. It's not healthy to do it all the time. I do have this like infinite knowledge now, but I don't spend all of my time there. I live a regular human life, but my higher self always is invested and connected. It's like your mind, body, soul connection. A lot of the time we live in our mind and our body because that is being human, and your human life is heavy. I don't know another way to explain it. It just feels heavy. The energy is heavy, but your soul is always on the other side. Always, always, always on the other side. And so that ability to start to understand that and start to feel supported is in everybody. There are a few exceptions. Psychopaths, a lot of sociopaths don't have that ability just because it's a very difficult life to live and difficult lessons to walk through. And if they had that ability, then they have empathy, and then they can't complete the life that they'd end up going to the other side. But almost everybody has the ability to have a connection with yourself on the other side. and guides and stuff like that, or God, whatever you want to call it. They don't care. If you believe in God, Mother Earth, a higher power, guides, they don't care. It's all essentially the same energy.
Many people now are coming forward and sharing your NDEs, and you are as well. And your guides, I believe, want you to share your NDE. So do you think humanity is in a space right now where they need help, and that's why all these people are coming forward and sharing?
I think rather than need help, because we never need help, we know what we're doing and we plan these lives. It's more, we're more open to understanding the potential of humankind. We are working towards a future where everybody is an empath. We are working towards being more like the other side. It's just a very long, laborious process. So we're more ready for knowledge that we are not these individual, either successful or not successful humans. It's a whole, on the other side, we are all the same energy. There's no culture, race, religion, anything like that, no sexuality or gender. You are all the same. You all love each other equally. And we're slowly working towards that level of knowledge and understanding of being human. When I say slowly, I mean like slowly as in hundreds of years, but in spirit time, that's not that long. In human time, it is a long time.
What inspires you about your NDE?
I think feeling not alone. I spent my whole life feeling like there's something wrong with me, that I was different from other people. And I think people who are old souls, and by old, I don't mean age, like human age. I mean how many lives you've lived. And I've lived a lot. And this life was uncomfortable. From the moment I was born, I didn't feel like I fit. And I tried my whole life to find somewhere I fit and some understanding. And I used to stand in front of a mirror and literally say to myself, my name is Amber, and this is so weird that I am in this body. Like I would look at myself in the mirror and not recognize myself because I was such a high level soul in this heavy human body and nothing made sense. I was like an 85-year-old 3-year-old. I took care of everyone all the time. And even when I was surrounded in people, I felt alone my entire life. And even, like I have kids, and before the stroke, we were at the peak of our success. Me and my husband and my kids, we had just bought a beautiful, like dream house. I was making fairly good money. My kids were doing amazing in school and sports, stuff like that. Like, looking in from the outside, the perfect life. And I still didn't feel like I fit. I have always struggled with relationships, friendships, because it was so hard for me to relate to humans. And I was always trying to hide a part of me. Like, it wasn't good enough to be this person who is kind of half here and half on the other side. And having the NDE, going to the other side, seeing my guides, seeing my past, present, and future, and how it all made sense, there is not a moment in my life now where I feel alone. Not one moment. Once in a while, I will, struggle with faith that this is where I'm supposed to be. And it is hard. I'm not, glossing over the fact that my physical body is effed. Like I struggle with pain every day and I don't take painkillers because they affect me. I struggle with eating. I've lost a lot of weight. I struggle to keep weight on, like it's still difficult. But even though I would not wish this on anybody, I feel more like I belong and have a purpose than I ever have before. I can take this body, I can walk with it through my entire life. I can't shake hands with people because I can't feel and I don't know where their hand is, that sort of stuff. Who goes in public speaks when you can't even shake the person's hand, But even with that, I feel like I have such a purpose. And I know that no matter what, even if I don't have one human around me the rest of my life, I'm never alone. I'm always supported. Every decision we make, you have an entire cheering squad on the other side going, yes, look at you, you did it. Every time you fall and you're devastated and you question just your existence and you think everything you're doing is wrong, there is a crowd of people on the other side standing right beside you, walking with you so you don't fall down. And having that knowledge, I just wish everybody could have it. It makes the weight of the world so much less.
For people that are grieving over the loss of a loved one or their own death anxiety, what kind of advice do you have for them?
So, death anxiety is really like a very real thing. A lot of people watch me, like my social media live videos and stuff, and that's one of the number one anxiety. And what I can say is, I never felt more peaceful than when I went to the other side. It wasn't scary, and it is this quick. And once I was out of my body, it it ceases to exist. You can't feel the pain. And we get to make the choice in each life whether or not we want to experience the pain when we're dying. So most of the time, if you are completely comatose, dying from cancer or some other very painful disease, your soul leaves your body before you die. So you don't have to feel the death. And usually you stand in the side of the room, listen to your family and stuff like that. All I can say is it is so peaceful and wonderful. That does not mean you should go there before your time. You want to be here, but it's so peaceful. And there's a few ways of dying that you gain access to the other side long before. Alzheimer's is one of them. When somebody has severe Alzheimer's, they all of a sudden can see the other side. They can see their family. The veil is lifted. And they usually are quite peaceful at that point, maybe agitated because it's confusing, but, can go to work that day, talk to their friends, stuff like that, who are all long dead. So for the dying, it's so peaceful and it's so very quick. For grieving, it is a hard lesson, and it's a lesson we all will have to learn. I can say you miss them, but they don't have to miss you. If they died of an overdose or something very scary, a mass tragedy, they are not suffering. They're not over there going over everything, panicking, that sort of stuff. The second you are no longer alive, you have that innate peace that I had when I was there. It is everything you've ever wanted. It is coming home. That is our home. This is school. This is hard. But the lesson of grief is a very hard lesson, and you have to walk through it. You can't hide from it. You can't avoid it. It doesn't go away. So it's a necessary process. And I think I'm unique among people like me, mediums. I don't want people coming to me for at least a year, and sometimes much more than that. My gold standard is no less than a year, but you can't come until when you wake up in the morning and remember that person is dead, you can breathe. If you can't breathe, you don't go to somebody like me. And I think a lot of people take advantage of that because it's very easy to develop a relationship with a dead person. And it is not healthy, and it's not something humans should do. And it really drives me nuts that, some people go to mediums once a week to talk to a dead spouse. That is not, they want us to move forward. They want us to live our human lives. And grief doesn't get easier. It just gets a little bit lighter. So I can't say for a grieving person that, oh, wait 5 years, it's going to be great. No, because just like I have that knowledge, anytime I tune into it, I have that knowledge of the other side. For a grieving person, that memory is just here. The best memory with that person, and you might not think of it for a year or 5 years, and then all of a sudden when you do, it's like it just happened, and that will happen for the rest of your life, and that is just the grieving lesson. But I can say you will be with them on the other side. When you die, it will be like no time has passed, and they don't have to miss you. They don't have to suffer, because there is no suffering on the other side. No matter how they died, I know there's a lot of human judgment for certain deaths, like drugs, suicide, that sort of stuff. There is no judgment on the other side, not even an ounce. To that end, there's also no hell. So they're not being punished.
Amber, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yep. Yeah. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, although I just got that and I don't totally understand it, especially since the stroke. And I am writing a book. So on my Facebook, there's a link to sign up for a newsletter for when I release that, which will hopefully be in the fall. And it tells my whole story. And like I think the first half, just under half, is everything kind of we've talked about, the NDE stuff like that. And then the second half is all lessons from the other side. And then there's a chapter, like a Q&A with my guides.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
Oh, yes. I also have a YouTube channel. I don't, again, technology has disappeared for me. And so I used to post, there's a lot of really good interviews on there from when I very first accepted my gifts, just like base beliefs of what they have taught me, my guides have taught me. At some point, hopefully, I will start it up, and I'm in the works of maybe starting a podcast, but all of that takes energy, and I'm not quite at that 18 months. And my guides were very clear that you need to take it easy for that 18 months. And 18 months is June 23rd. So hopefully really good things will be happening after that.
Amber, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I think if everybody could just know that we are here to learn. If you feel like you are on a hamster wheel, doing the same thing, making the same mistakes again and again, and you're so frustrated, the reason you're there is because the lessons are so big, and you need to start identifying what they are so your guides stop throwing them at you. As humans, we just get frustrated and we try to do the same thing and think the results will be different. We are here to learn, and we are not alone. Our guides are here to help us learn. Our higher self is here to help us learn. And whether or not you believe in a higher power, whether your higher power is you or God or Mother Earth or a source of some kind, that higher power is always there and will always support you and help you walk through those lessons. The other side is our home, and we love it. But this is our school, and we crave coming here. We love to learn. So focus on the lessons so that you can stop being thrown at them.
Amber, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was great.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.